Right, ladies and gentlemen, can I be honest with you? I still can't believe we're here. And I still can't believe this is happening. But this coming weekend, we are going to see good old AJ, Anthony Joshua, come back from that damaging defeat that he suffered to Daniel Dubois when he takes on Jake Paul. Yes, Jake Paul, the YouTuber that everyone in the boxing world seems to want to give a kick into after they feel that he endangered the life of heavyweight legend Mike Tyson. And listen, we all love Mike Tyson, but we would just rather watch him at this point in the Hangover movies or something, rather than in there competing with a 27-year-old man. Anyway, I'm not here to rubbish Jake Paul. If you watched the video that I made before on this fight, you would see that I've got a lot of respect for Jake Paul. I think that he's proven himself to be one of the best businessmen that's in the limelight and under the age of 30 years old that I can think of. I also think that he's done wonders for female boxing. In fact, all you've got to do is look at this fight card and see that he's stuck half of the best female boxers out there on this exact card. And I even respect the steps that he has made within boxing, because all those years ago when he fought on his brother's undercard in a head guard, no one would have predicted that one day he would be fighting Anthony Joshua. No one could have predicted that. Maybe your local crackhead or something, but they're not cool. Anyway, seeing as fight night is now just a matter of days away, I am going to give you my final prediction on how I see this fight going. And I think I'm going to surprise one or two of you here. I'm not going to give you any spoilers this early on, but I will give you a hint on how I see it going. And I'll tell you now that I honestly believe that Jake Paul lands on Anthony Joshua. But that's all I'm giving you. I'm leaving it there. Let's get into the actual video. But people, before we do, welcome back to the Joey Knight Boxing channel. If you are a subscriber of this channel, you know that I haven't really put that much time and effort into it. Something that I'm hoping to change. Now, we've had a good response from the last couple of videos, so if you do want me to carry on and start putting more time and effort into this channel, please do me a massive favour. Subscribe to the channel if you're not now, and smash a like on this video. It helps me out massively. Let's get into the breakdown. Right, should it be happening? Probably not. Will I be watching it? No, probably at all. Definitely yes. And is Jake Paul getting chinned? Let's talk about it. I mean, yeah, at some point he's getting chinned, isn't he? But you lot want to know when, and in that case, let's talk about it. And if you're not wondering when Jake gets chinned and you actually think Jake's going to win this fight, then I don't know what to say to you, but all I can say is don't put any money on it. Use the money, go and see a doctor, because that's what you need. No, in all seriousness, right, I have got a suspicion. It's just a suspicion, it's just a feeling, but I've got a feeling that Jake Paul has probably been hating life for the past couple of weeks. And I'll tell you why, because does everyone know that piece of footage of sparring that has been circulating the internet quite a lot recently? It's the big heavyweight guy. He comes in quite reckless on Jake Paul. Jake Paul dips down, bang, drops a heavyweight. Well, that heavyweight is DeAndre Savage. Me neither. But he's 35 years old, he's from America, and he has a pretty good record of 10-1. However, like most prospects, he went 10-0 before he even gave a sniff of fighting anyone with a pulse. Anyone with anything close to a winning record. And when he did do that, he lost his unbeaten record. And to go one further, he's not even ranked inside the top 50 American heavyweights. One of the weakest eras of American heavyweights that I can ever remember. And all of that being said, Jake Paul has still done well just for getting in with this fella who, if nothing else, is still known as a bit of a puncher. And Jake Paul has done even better in being able to legitimately put him on his arse. But that's one level of sparring. To be precise, that level is ranked 249th by BoxRec when it's looking at heavyweights. And when BoxRec looks at heavyweights, you have to go all the way up the list to find number 5 ranked, Lawrence Okolie. That is who Jake Paul has been sparring with over these past few weeks.
Trouble finding Hussein Mohammed early on.
And a lot of you guys will know this because Jake Paul showed the bruises and marks on his face and said that it was Lawrence Okolie that had done that. And faces don't necessarily tell you how a spar went. Some guy can have blood all over him, he can have a busted up nose, but he still won the rounds in sparring. But I can only imagine that this week has been a very, very humbling experience for Jake Paul. In fact, the past few weeks will have been eye-opening for Jake Paul. A past few weeks where he has sparred the likes of Lawrence Okolie, of Jared Anderson, and of Frank Sanchez as well. And being that I have seen Jake Paul go life and death with Tommy Fury, you can guarantee you that Okolie, that Anderson, and that Frank Sanchez have basically manhandled Jake Paul in there. And that experience would have been somewhat of a dawn of realization upon Jake Paul that this is actually happening now. So to an extent, I'll be honest, I actually feel sorry for Jake Paul. I mean, I don't, because then I remember the 70 odd million that he's reported to be earning at the end of this fight. But you can't deny, right, that in a world where these almost fantasy fights and whatnot are making such a shitload of cash, that Jake Paul's probably being paid in line for this fight, actually. And the reason I say he's being paid in line is because I really don't think it takes a genius to work out where I'm going with my prediction for this fight. And that is obviously, no, in fact, drum roll, please. AJ via knockout, obviously, technical knockout, if Jake gets really, really lucky. But in what fashion is he going to do it? Because I've already said that I see Jake Paul potentially landing punches on Anthony Joshua. So how exactly do I see it happening? Am I predicting Hagler against Hearns? A shootout between two mountains of men? No. I'm not, actually. Because this week, I've actually been watching back the last couple of fights where Anthony Joshua has been this light. And I say this light because this fight has a maximum weight allowance for Anthony Joshua of 245 pounds. So I'm guessing that he's going to outweigh Jake Paul in that boxing ring by about 25 to 30 pounds on the night. But regardless of the extra weight he's going to have onto him, that's still a trim Anthony Joshua. That's the sort of Anthony Joshua that turned up first time round against Usyk. However, I don't see that version of Anthony Joshua fighting against Jake Paul. Because the AJ that turns up for Jake Paul, in my opinion, is very, very simple. And I believe it's the exact AJ that turned up for the rematch against Andy Ruiz Jr. Listen, I think that AJ is going to want to box perfect for this one, and I also think there'll be an amount of pressure on him to go in there and to not take a single punch for as long as it lasts, at least, against Jake Paul. And therefore, I think Anthony Joshua is going to go back to his Olympic style against Jake Paul. I think he's going to box up on his toes. I think he's going to draw a little bit of confidence from the amateur days where obviously you would go and you would spar at other gyms, and sometimes you would spar against someone who is just a level or a million levels below yourself, and you do end up having a bit of a mismatched spar. And at the same time as that, I think that when you have those mismatched spars and you're in there with someone that you've got 7-8 times the amount of fights as, and the skill gap is really, really vast, I actually think you don't always box as well. In fact, you rarely ever box as well in that specific scenario. And I think that in that scenario, you do just look for the perfect punch somewhat. And I think that's what AJ is going to do. I think he is going to look for that perfect single or combination to take Jake Paul out. And I think that when he's doing that, he's going to have a good look at Jake Paul, and he's going to try and be working Jake Paul out. And it's in that process of when he's working Jake Paul out that I do genuinely think that Jake Paul will land a couple of punches. But I should be specific and say what punches I think they are. I just think there may be straights to the body. Do I write off the possibility that Jake could come in and feint a double jab, land a right hand to the body? No, I don't. I do think that Jake Paul will get off a shot or two on Anthony Joshua, and I think it will be to the body. You've got to remember, it'll be quite a long time since Anthony Joshua has boxed anyone near Jake Paul's height. When Jake Paul throws a punch, he really does dip his head quite low. If he dips that head, for example, and he's just going to throw the jab, I think that Anthony Joshua might think back to that sparring footage when he drops that heavyweight sparring partner, and therefore Anthony Joshua might sort of lean back thinking that the right hand is going to come at him. If he does do that and Jake Paul throws his jab, I could see Jake Paul getting off with a jab to the body. I could see Jake Paul maybe getting off with a combination to the body, but I don't see it doing that much. I actually think it will do the complete opposite. I think that it will give Jake Paul the confidence that he needs to launch his first attack. And whether it's the first or the second, it's when Jake Paul launches that attack when the fight ends up becoming very, very hard for Jake Paul. Because in my opinion, even when you take away that skill set advantage that Anthony Joshua has, there's a style matchup advantage that Anthony Joshua also has. And Jake Paul's style is not a good style against Anthony Joshua. I think that he'll find that out very, very quickly. And here again is where I respect Jake Paul, because when he finds that out, I see him going for it. But it's on that attack when Jake goes for AJ. Imagine this. I'm talking about a fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, and I'm saying Jake Paul's going to be the aggressor. That is mad, but it's true. I think he will be the aggressor against Anthony Joshua. And the second that he goes for Anthony Joshua, I think that Anthony Joshua is going to see that Jake Paul is just open for so many different shots. He leaves his head in line massively when he throws his punches. When he jabs, he leaves his head on that center line, and it becomes a perfect opportunity to land a counter right hand on him. Something that AJ has been very, very good at doing throughout his career. Meaning if you can read it, you can throw a host of different counter punches that are going to be able to hit him. And therefore, I just can't see anything past Jake Paul finally pulling the trigger and going for it after a little bit of hesitancy. And that's when he gets countered probably by Anthony Joshua's left hook, because Jake Paul is very open to a left hook. And do you know what it is? When he does get hit, I think that's when we see the fighter in Jake Paul. And that's exactly what he is, by the way, people. He is a fighter, because there are many people that would come into this YouTube space, and the second it gets to a point when they have to start fighting actual athletes, they would then leave. Jake Paul has persevered. He stuck around, and ultimately, he stuck around, in my opinion, to pay the price eventually. Because the fighter in him gets him chinned. That is the cold truth of it. I would imagine that it will probably be a left hook from Anthony Joshua, but I wouldn't rule out it being the straight right hand either. And it's within that sequence when he gets hurt that if Jake Paul was going to land something big again, or big by his standards, it would be here, but it wouldn't do anything to Anthony Joshua, in my opinion. I think he's got the right idea in terms of, yeah, you should attack Anthony Joshua. Obviously, Alexander Usyk, Andy Ruiz, Dillian Whyte, so many others have had success with it, but I think you'd need to be in a different body to be able to have success with it if you're Jake Paul. So I don't know whether it's going to be round 1. I don't know whether it's going to be round 2. I mean, Ngannou got to round 2 against Anthony Joshua, but then again, I think Ngannou would probably beat Jake Paul. So it depends how Jake Paul approaches this fight. But at some point, I feel like Jake Paul is going to go for it. And when he does go for it, I think that Anthony Joshua gets him out of there and does so quickly. Is it going to be round 1? Is it going to be round 2? I really don't know, but it's going to be quick in this one. And I think what could end up happening is Jake kind of freezes up after taking the first stiff jab from Anthony Joshua, but I do think that Jake has probably come to terms now with the fact that he's probably going to get knocked out in this fight. And I mentioned the fact that boxing fans still feel some sort of way about Jake Paul since his fight with Mike Tyson. And the irony here is, I think this is the thing that will make boxing fans forgive Jake Paul. Because yes, you did drag Mike Tyson out of retirement. I know you paid him handsomely, but either way, many boxing fans do hold that against you. But you are going out on your shield here, and people will respect that. In fact, I'll go one further and say if Jake Paul gets ironed out by Anthony Joshua, people will not only respect it, people will forgive him for the Mike Tyson thing. So in the weirdest way possible, even with everything he's done, it's going to be getting sparked out by Anthony Joshua, which gets Jake Paul his respect in the boxing world. And I'll tell you what, people, if Jake Paul can somehow pull a miracle out of the bag, he can close his eyes, throw from the heavens, and clip Anthony Joshua on the chin, all hell will break loose. And as much as I think it would be one of the best spectacles I've ever seen, it's just not happening. Jake's not getting to AJ. I know people think that AJ's fallen from grace and he might be a shell of himself that he was before, and you might be right. You might be. But it's like in football, when Ronaldo went to play in Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden you're going to be banging in goals every week, and you're going to be looking like the bollocks, because you are a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And that's exactly what's going to happen to Anthony Joshua here. He is going to look like he's rolled back the years. He is going to look vicious because the level of what's in front of him has dropped significantly. And I do think there's always going to be that little bit of Anthony Joshua that just thinks, hold on, my level might have dropped and I might have been beat, but I've been beat at world level. It's an insult to even say that I should go back in at British level. And if you don't understand this by now or not, people, Jake Paul's not British level. He's nowhere near British level. So Anthony Joshua should be treating this kid as food in this fight. And I understand that it might be a bit graphic for some people, but I didn't sign up for it, okay? I'm happy to say I wouldn't box Anthony Joshua, but I also respect Jake Paul for doing it. So I'm really eager to hear how you lot think this one is going, but I can only give my opinion on it, and I think that it's over within 1 round. Specifically, I think that it's over whenever Jake Paul goes for Anthony Joshua. But if you can see anything different, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you've made it to the end of another video, please smash a like on it. Hit subscribe on the channel if you're not already. I love you very much. I will see you all in the next one.